Part 4, Captain Silver. Chapter 28, In the Enemy's Camp. The red glare of the torch, lighting up the interior of the black house, showed me the worst of my apprehensions realized. The pirates were in possession of the house and stores. There was the cask of cognac. There was the pork and bread, as before, and what tenfold increased my horror, not a sign of any prisoner. I could only judge that all had perished, and my heart smote me sorely that I had not been there to perish with them. There were 6 of the buccaneers, all told. Not another man was left alive. 5 of them were on their feet, flushed and swollen, suddenly called out of the first sleep of drunkenness. The 6th had only risen up upon his elbow, and was deadly pale, and the blood-stained bandage round his head told that he had recently been wounded, and still more recently dressed. I remember the man who had been shot and had run back among the woods in the great attack, and doubted that this was not he. Doubted not that this was he. The parrot sat, preening her plumage, on Long John's shoulder. He himself, I thought, looked somewhat paler and more stern than I was used to. He still wore the fine broadcloth suit in which he had fulfilled his mission, but it was bitterly the worse for wear, daubed with clay and torn with the sharp briars of the wood. "So," said he, "here's Jim Hawkins, shiver my timbers. Dropped in like, well, come, I take that friendly." And thereupon he sat down across the brandy cask and began to fill a pipe. "Give me a loan of the link, Dick," said he, and then, when he had good light, "That'll do, lad," he added. "Stick the glim in the wood heap. And you, gentlemen, bring yourselves too. You needn't stand up for Mr. Hawkins. He'll excuse you. You may lay to that. And so, Jim," stopping the tobacco, "here you were, and quite a pleasant surprise for poor old John. I see you were smart when first I set my eyes on you, but this here gets away from me clean, it do." To all this, as may well be supposed, I made no answer. They had set me with my back against the wall, and I stood there, looking Silver in the face, pluckily enough, I hope, to all outward appearance, but with black despair in my heart. Silver took a whiff or two of his pipe with great composure, and then ran on again. "Now, you see, Jim, so be it as you are here," says he. "I'll give you a piece of my mind. I've always liked you. I have, for a lad of spirit, and the picture of my own self for when I was young and handsome. I always wanted you to join and take your share, and die a gentleman, and now, my cock, you've got to. Captain Smollett's a fine seaman, as I'll own up to any day, but stiff on discipline. Duty is duty," says he, and right he is. Just you keep clear of the captain. The doctor himself has gone dead again, you ungrateful scamp, was what he said. And the short and the long of the whole story is about here. You can't go back to your own lot, for they won't have you, and without you, start a 3rd ship's company all by yourself, which might be lonely. You'll have to join with Captain Silver." So far so good. My friends, then, were still alive, and though I partly believed the truth of Silver's statement, that the cabin party were incensed at me for my desertion, I was more relieved than distressed by what I heard. "I don't say nothing as to your being on hands," continued Silver, "though there you are, and you may lay to it. I'm all for argument. I've never seen good come out of threatening. If you like the service, well, you'll join. If you don't, Jim, why, you're free to answer no. Free and welcome, shipmate, and if fair can be said by mortal seaman, shiver my sides." "Am I to answer, then?" I asked with a very tremulous voice. Though all this sneering talk, I was made to feel the threat of death overhung me, and my cheeks burned with the heart beat painfully in my breast. "Lad," said Silver, "no one's pressing you. Take your bearings. None of us won't hurry you, mate. Time goes so pleasant in your company, you see." "Well," says I, growing a bit bolder, "if I'm to choose, I declare I have a right to know what's what, and why you're here, and where my friends are." "What's what?" repeated one of the buccaneers in a deep growl. "Ah, He'd be a lucky one as knowed that. You'd perhaps batten your hatches till you're spoke to, my friend, cried Silver truculently to the speaker. And then, in his first gracious tones, he replied to me. Yesterday morning, Mr. Hawkins, said he, in the dog watch, down came Dr. Livesey with a flag of truce. Says he, Captain Silver, you're sold out. Ship's gone. Well, maybe we'd be taking a glass, and a song to help it round. I won't say no. Leastways, none of us had looked out. We looked out, and by thunder, the old ship was gone. I never seen a pack of fools look fishier, and you may lay to that. If I tells you that looked the fishiest. Well, says the doctor, let's bargain. We bargained, him and I, and here we are. Stores, brandy, blockhouse, the firewood you was thoughtful enough to cut, and in a manner of speaking, the whole blessed boat from Cross Trees to Kelson. As for them, they've tramped. I don't know where's they are. He drew again quietly at his pipe. Unless you should take it into that head of yours, he went on, that you was included in the treaty. Here's the last word that was said. How many are you, says I, to leave? 4, says he. 4 and one of us wounded. As for that boy, I don't know where he is. Confound him, says he. Nor I don't much care. We're about sick of him. Those were all his words. Is that all? I asked. Well, it's all that you're to hear, my son, returned Silver. And now I am to choose. And now you're to choose. You may lay to that, said Silver. Well, said I, I'm not such a fool. I know pretty well what I have to look for. Let the worst come to worst. It's little I care. I've seen too many die since I fell in with you. But there's a thing or two I have to tell you, I said, and by this time I was quite excited. And the first is this. Here you are, in a bad way. Ship lost, treasure lost, men lost, your whole business gone to wreck. And if you want to know who did it, it was I. I was in the apple barrel the night we sighted land, and heard you, John, and you, Dick Johnson, and Hans, who was now at the bottom of the sea, and told every word you said before the hour was out. And as for the schooner, it was I who cut her cable, and it was I that killed the men you had aboard her, and it was I who brought her where you'll never see her more, not one of you. The laugh's on my side. I've had the top of this business from the first. I no more fear you as I fear a fly. Kill me, if you please, or spare me. But one thing I'll say, and no more. If you spare me, bygones are bygones. And when you fellows are in court for piracy, I'll save you all I can. It's for you to choose. Kill another and do yourselves no good, or spare me and keep a witness to save you from the gallows. I stopped for, I tell you, I was out of breath. And to my wonder, not a man of them moved, but all sat staring at me like as many sheep. And while they were all staring, I broke out again. And now, Mr. Silver, I said, I believe you're the best man here. And if things go to the worst, I'll take it kind of you to let the doctor know the way I took it. I'll bear in mind, said Silver with an accent so curious that I could not, for the life of me, decide whether if he were laughing at my request or had been favorably affected by my courage. I'll put one to that, cried the old mahogany-faced seaman, Morgan by name, who I'd seen in Long John's public house upon the quays of Bristol. It was him that knowed Black Dog. Well, and see here, added the sea cook, I'll put another again to that, by thunder. For it was this same boy that faked the chart from Billy Bones, first and last. We've split upon Jim Hawkins. Then here goes, said Morgan with an oath, as he sprang up, drawing his knife as if he had been 20. Avast there, cried Silver. Who are you, Tom Morgan? Maybe you thought you was captain there, perhaps. By the powers, I'll teach you better. Cross me, and you'll go where many a good man's gone before you. First and last, these 30 year back, some of the yard arms shiver my timbers, and some by the board, and all to feed the fishes. There's never a man who looked me between the eyes and ain't seen a good day afterwards. Tom Morgan, you may lay to that. Morgan paused, but a hoarse murmur rose from the others. Tom's right, said one. I stood hazing long enough for one, added another. I'll be hanged if I I'll be hazed by you, John Silver. Did any of you gentlemen want to have it out with me? Roared Silver, bending far forward from his position on the keg, with his pipe still glowing in his right hand. Put a name on what you're at. You ain't dumb, I reckon. Him that wants shall get it. Have I lived this many years, and a son of rum punchin' cock his hat athwart my hoss at the latter end of it? You know, by the way, you're all gentlemen of fortune, by your account. Well, I'm ready. Take a cutlass him that dares, and I'll see the color of his inside, crutch and all, before the pipe's empty. Not a man stirred, not a man's answered. That's your sort, is it? He added, returning his pipe to his mouth. Well, you're a gay lot to look at, anyway. Not much worth to fight, you ain't. Perhaps you can understand King George's English. I'm captain here by election. I'm captain here because I'm the best man by a long sea mile. You won't fight, as gentlemen of fortune should. Then, by thunder, you'll obey, and you may lay to it. I like that boy now. I never seen a better boy than that. He's more than a man than any pair of rats of you in this here house. And what I say is this. Let me see him that'll lay a hand on him. That's what I say, and you may lay to it. There was a long pause after this. I stood straight up against the wall, my heart still going like a sledgehammer, but with a ray of hope now shining in my bosom. Silver leant back against the wall, his arms crossed, his pipe in the corner of his mouth, as calm as though he had been in church. Yet his eye kept wandering furtively, and he kept the tail of it on his unruly followers. Then, on their part, drew gradually together towards the far end of the blockhouse, and the low hiss of their whispering sounded my ear continuously, like a stream. One after another, they would look up, and the red light of the torch would fall for a second on their nervous faces, but it was not towards me. It was towards Silver that they turned their eyes. You seem to have a lot to say, remarked Silver, spitting far into the air. Pipe up, and let me hear it, or lay to. Ax your pardon, sir, returned one of the men. You're pretty free with some of the rules. Maybe you'll kindly keep an eye upon the rest. The crew is dissatisfied. This crew don't value bullying of marlinspike. This crew has its rights, like other crews, so I'll make so free as that. And by your own rules, I take it we can talk together. I ask your pardon, sir, acknowledging you for being captain at the present, but I claim my right and step outside for a council. And with an elaborate sea salute, this fellow, a long, ill-looking, yellow-eyed man of 35, stepped coolly towards the door and disappeared out the house. One after another, the rest followed his example, each making a salute as he passed, each adding some apology. According to rules, said one. Forecastle Council, said Morgan. And so, with one remark or another, all marched out and left Silver and me alone with the torch. The sea cook instantly removed his pipe. Now you look here, Jim Hawkins, he said in a steady whisper that was no more than audible. You're within half a plank of death. And what's a long sight worse of torture? They're going to throw me off. But, you mark, I stand you through thick and thin. I didn't mean to. No, not till you spoke up. I was about desperate to lose that much blood, and be hanged into the bargain. But I see you was the right sort. I says to myself, you stand by Hawkins, John, and Hawkins will stand by you. You're his last card, and by living thunder, John, he's yours. Back to back, says I. You save your own witness, and he'll save your neck. I began dimly to understand. You mean all's lost? I asked. Aye, by gum, I do, he answered. Ship's gone, neck's gone, that's the size of it. Once I looked into that bay, Jim Hawkins, and seen no schooner, well, I'm tough, but I gave out. As for that lot and their council, mark me, they're outright fools and cowards. I'll save your life, if so be as I can, from them. But, see here, Jim, tit for tat, you saved Long John from swinging. I was bewildered. It seemed a thing so hopeless, he was asking. The old buccaneer, the ringleader throughout. What I can do, that I'll do, I said. It's a bargain, cried Long John. You speak up, Plucky, and by thunder, I've a chance. He hobbled to the torch, where it stood propped among the firewood, and took a fresh light to his pipe. Understand me, Jim, said he, returning. I have a head on my shoulders, I have. I'm on Squire's side now. I know you've got that ship safe somewheres. How you've done it, I don't know. But it's safe it is. I guess Hans and O'Brien turned soft. I never much believed in neither of them. Now, you mark me. I ask no questions, nor I won't let others. I know when a game's up, I do. And I know a lad that's staunch. Ah, you that's young. You and me might have done a power of good together. He drew some cognac from the cask into a tin cannikin. Will you taste, messmate? He asked. And when I'd refused, well, I'll take a drain myself, Jim, said he. I need a caulker, for there's trouble on hand. And talking of trouble, why did that doctor give me the chart, Jim? My face expressed a wonder so unaffected that he saw the needlessness of further questions. Ah, well, he did, though, said he. And there's something under that, no doubt. Something, surely, under that. Jim, bad or good. And he took another swallow of the brandy, shaking his great fair head like a man who looks forward into the worst. Chapter 29. The Black Spot Again. The council of the buccaneers had lasted some time, when one of them re-entered the house, and with a repetition of the same salute, which had many eyes and an ironical air, begged for a moment's loan of the torch. Silver briefly agreed, and this emissary retired again, leaving us together in the dark. There's a breeze coming, Jim, said Silver, who had by this time adopted a quite friendly and familiar tone. I turned to the loophole nearest me and looked out. The embers of the great fire had so far burned themselves out and now glowed so low and duskily that I understood why these conspirators desired a torch. About halfway down the slope to the stockade, they were collected in a group. One held the light, another was on his knees in their midst, and I saw a blade of an open knife shine in the hand with varying colors in the moon and torchlight. The rest were all somewhat stooping, as though watching the maneuvers of this last. I could just make out that he had a book as well as a knife in his hand, and was still wondering how anything so incongruous had come in their possession when the kneeling figure rose once more with his feet, and the whole party began to move together towards the house. Here they come, said I, returned to my former position, for it seemed beneath my dignity that they should find me watching them. Well, let 'em come, lad, let 'em come, said Silver cheerily. I've still a shot in my locker. The door opened, and the 5 men, standing huddled together just inside, pushed one of their number forward. In any other circumstances, it would have been comical to see this slow advance, hesitating as he set down each foot, but holding his closed right hand in front of him. Step up, lad, cried Silver. I won't eat you. Hand it over, lubber. I know the rules, I do. I won't hurt a deputation. Thus encouraged, the buccaneer stepped forth more briskly, and having passed something to Silver from hand to hand, slipped yet more smartly back again into his companions. The sea cook looked at what had been given him. The black spot. I thought so, he observed. Where might you have gotten the paper? Why, hello, look here now. This ain't lucky. You've gone and cut this out of Bible. What fools cut a Bible? Ah, there, said Morgan. There, what did I say? No good come of that, I said. Well, you've about fixed it now among you, continued Silver. You'll all swing now, I reckon. What soft-headed lubber had a Bible? It was Dick, said one. Dick, was it? Then Dick can get to prayers, said Silver. He's seen his slice of luck, has Dick, and you may lay to that. But here the long man with yellow eyes struck in. Belay that talk, John Silver, he said. This crew has tipped you the black spot in full council, and is duty bound, just you turn it over, as duty bound, and see what's wrote there. Then you can talk. Thank you, George, replied the sea cook. You always was brisk for business, and had the rules by heart. George, as I'm pleased to see. Well, what is it anyway? Ah, deposed. That's it, is it? Pretty, very pretty robe, to be sure. Like print, I swear. Your hand to write, George? Why, you is getting quite a leading man in this here crew. You'll be captain next. I shouldn't wonder. Just oblige me with that torch again, will you? This pipe won't draw. Come now, said George. You don't fool this crew no more. You're a funny man by your account. But you're over now. And you'll maybe step off that barrel and help vote. I thought you said you knowed the rules, returned Silver contemptuously. Leastways, if you don't, I do, and I wait here. And I'm still your captain, mind, till you outs with your grievances, and I reply. In the meantime, your black spot ain't worth the biscuit. After all, we'll see. Oh, replied George, you don't be under no kind of apprehension. We're all square, we are. First, you've made a hash of this cruise. You'll be a bold man to say no to that. Second, you let the enemy out of this here trap for nothing. Why did they want out? I don't know, but it's pretty plain they wanted it. Third, you wouldn't let us go at them upon the march. Oh, we see through you, John. You want to play booty. That's what's wrong with you. And then fourth, there's this here boy. Is that all? Asked Silver quietly. Enough too, retorted George. We'll all swing and sun-dry you for bungling. Well now, look here. I'll answer these 4 points. One after another, I'll answer 'em. I made a hash of this cruise, did I? Well now, you all know what I wanted, and you all know that if I'd done that, we'd been aboard the Hispaniola this night as ever was, every man of us alive, and fit and full of good plum duff, and the creature in the hold of her by thunder. Well, who crossed me? Who forced my hand, and was the lawful captain? Who tipped me the black spot the day we landed and began this dance? Ah, it's a fine dance. I'm with you there, and looks mighty like a hornpipe at a rope's end at Execution Dock by London town, it does. But who done it? Why, it was Anderson, and Hans, and you, George Merry. And you're the last above board of that same meddling crew, and you'll have the Davy Jones insolence to up and stand for captain over me. You, that sank the lot of us, by the powers, but this tops the stiffest yarn to nothing. Silver paused, and I could see by the faces of George and his late comrades that these words had not been said in vain. That's for number 1, cried the accused, wiping the sweat from his brow, for he had been talking with a vehemence that shook the house. Why, I give you my word, I'm sick to speak to you. You've neither sense nor memory, and I leave it to fancy whether your mother's that was let you come to see. See, gentlemen of fortune, I reckon tailors is your trade. Go on, John, said Morgan. Speak up to the others. Ah, the others, returned John. They're a nice lot, ain't they? You say this cruise is bungled? Ah, by gum, if you could understand how bad it's bungled, you would see. We're near that gibbet, and the next stuff with thinking on it. You've seen 'em, maybe, hanged in chains, birds about 'em, seamen pinting 'em out as they go down with the tide. Who's that? Says one. That? Why, they can hear your chains jangle as you go about and reach for the other buoy. Now, that's about where we are. Every mother's son of us. Thanks to him and Hans and Anderson and the other ruination fools of you. And if you want to know about number 4 and the boy, why, shiver my timbers. Isn't he a hostage? Are we going to waste a hostage? No, not us. He might be our last chance, and I shouldn't wonder. Kill that boy? Not me, mates. And number 3? Ah, well, here's a deal to say to number 3. Maybe you don't count it nothing to have a real college doctor come to see you every day. Me, John, with your head broke, or you, George Merry, that had the ague shakes upon you not 6 hours agone, and has your eyes the colors of lemon peel this same moment on the clock? And maybe, perhaps, you didn't know there was a consort coming either. But there is, and a not so long till then. And we'll see who's glad to have a hostage when it comes to that. As for number 2, and why I made a bargain, well, you came crawling on your knees to me to make it. On your knees you came. You was that downhearted, and you'll have starved if I hadn't. But that's a trifle. You look there, that's why. And he cast down upon the floor a paper that I instantly recognized, none other than the chart on yellow paper, with the 3 red crosses that I had found in the oilcloth at the bottom of the captain's chest. Why the doctor had given it to him was more than I could fancy. But if it were inexplicable to me, the appearance of the chart was incredible to the surviving mutineers. They leaped upon it like cats upon a mouse. It went from hand to hand, one tearing it from another, and by the oaths and cries and the childish laughter which they accompanied with their examination, you could have thought, not only were they fingering the very gold, but were at sea with it, besides, in safety. Yes, said one, that's Flint, sure enough, JF and a score below, with a clove hitch to it, and so he done ever. Mighty pretty, said George, but how are we to get away with it? And us no ship. Silver suddenly sprang up, and supporting himself with a hand against the wall. Now I give you warning, George, he cried. One more word of your sauce, and I'll call down and fight you. How? Why, how do I know? You ought to tell me that, you and the rest. You lost me my schooner, with your interference. Burn you, but not you. You can't. You haven't got the intervention of a cockroach. But civil you can speak, and shall. George Mary, you may lay to that. That's fair, now, said the old man Morgan. Fair? I reckon so, said the sea cook. You lost that ship. I found the treasure. Who's a better man than that? And now I resign. By thunder. Eject whom you may please to be your captain now. I'm done with it. Silver, they cried. Barbecue forever. Barbecue for captain. So that's the tune, is it? Cried the cook. George, I reckon you'll have to wait another turn, friend. And lucky for you, I'm not a revengeful man. But that was never my way. And now, shipmates, this black spot ain't much good now, is it? Dick's crossed his luck and spoiled his Bible, and that's about all. It'll do good to kiss the book on still, won't it? Growled Dick, who was evidently uneasy at the curse he had brought upon himself. A Bible with a bit cut out, returned Silver derisively. Not it. It don't buy no more than a ballad book. Don't it, though? Cried Dick with a sort of joy. Well, I reckon that's worth having, too. Here, Jim, here's a curiosity for you, said Silver, and he tossed me the paper. It was around the size of a crown piece. One side was blank, for it was the last leaf. The other contained a verse or two of the Revelation, these words among the rest, which struck sharply home upon my mind. Without the dogs are murderers. The printed side had been blackened with wood ash, which already began to come off and soil my fingers, and the blank side had been written with the same material, the one word, deposed. I have that curiosity beside me at the moment, but not a trace of writing now remains beyond a single scratch, such as a man might make with his thumbnail. That was the end of the night's business. Soon after, with a drink all round, we lay down to sleep, and the outside of Silver's vengeance put George Merry up for sentinel and threatened him with death if he should prove unfaithful. It was a long ere I could close an eye, and heaven knows I had matter enough for thought in the man whom I had slain that afternoon, in my own most perilous position, and above all, in remarkable game I saw Silver, now engaged upon keeping the mutineers with one hand and grasping with the other after every means, possible and impossible, to make his peace and save his miserable life. He himself slept peacefully, and he snored aloud, yet my heart was sore for him, wicked as he was, to think on the dark perils that envisioned with the shameful gibbet that was awaited him. Chapter 30. On Parole. I was wakened, indeed, we were all wakened, for I could see even the sentinel shake himself together from where he had fallen against the doorpost, by a clear, hearty voice hailing us from the margin of the wood. Blockhouse ahoy, it cried, here's the doctor. And the doctor it was. Although I was glad to hear the sound, yet my gladness was not without admixture. I remembered with confusion my insubordinate and stealthy conduct, and when I saw where it had brought me, among what companions and surrounded by what dangers, I felt ashamed to look him in the face. He must have risen in the dark, for a day had hardly come, and when I ran to a loophole and looked out, I saw him standing, like silver once before, up to the mid-leg in creeping vapor. "You, doctor, top of the morning to you, sir," cried Silver, broad awake and beaming with the good nature in a moment. "Bright and early, to be sure, and it's the early bird, as the saying goes, that gets the rations. George, shake up your timbers, son, and help Dr. Livesey over the ship's side. All a-doing well. Your patience was as well and merry." "You, doctor, top of the morning to you, sir," cried Silver, broad awake and beaming with good nature in a moment. So he pattered on, standing on the hilltop with his crutch under his elbow and one hand upon the side of the longhouse, quite the old John in voice, manner, and expression. "We've quite a surprise for you too, sir," he continued. "We've a little stranger here. He, a new boarder and lodger, sir, and looking fit and taut as a fiddle. Slept like a supercargo, he did, right alongside of John. Stem to stem he was all night." Dr. Livesey was by this time across the stockade and pretty near the cook. I could hear the situation in his voice, as he said, "Not Jim." "The very same Jim as ever was," said Silver. The doctor stopped outright, although he did not speak, and it was some seconds later before he was able to move on. "Well, well," he said at last, "duty first and pleasure afterwards, as you might have said yourself, Silver. Let us overhaul these patients of yours." A moment afterwards, he had entered the blockhouse, and with one grim nod to me, he proceeded with his work among the sick. He deemed under no apprehension, though he must have known his life among these treacherous demons depended on a hair, and he rattled on his patients as if he were paying an ordinary professional visit to a quiet English family. His manner, I suppose, reacted on the men, for they have behaved to him as if nothing had occurred, and as if he were still ship's doctor, and they still faithful hands before the mast. "You're doing well, my friend," he said to his fellow with a bandaged head, "and if ever any person has a close shave, it was you. Your head must be as hard as iron. Well, George, how goes it? You're a pretty color, certainly. Why, your liver, man, it's upside down. Did you take that medicine? Did he take that medicine, man?" "Aye, sir, he took it, sure enough," returned Morgan. "Because you see, since I'm a mutineer's doctor, or prison doctor, as I prefer to call it," says Dr. Livesey in his pleasantest way, "I make a point of honor not to lose a man for King George, God bless him, and the gallows." The rogues looked at each other, but swallowed the home thirst in silence. "Dick don't feel well, sir," said one. "Don't he?" replied the doctor. "Well, step up here, Dick. Let me see your tongue." "No, I should be surprised if he did. The man's tongue is fit to frighten the French. Another fever." "Ah, there," said Morgan. "That comed the spilling Bibles. That comed, as you call it, of being—" "What?" retorted the doctor. "And not having sense enough to know honest air from poison, and the dry land from a vile pestiferous slough. I think it most probable, though of course it's only an opinion, that you'll all have the deuce to pay before you get that malaria out of your systems. Camp in a bog, would you? Silver, I'm surprised at you. You're less of a fool than many. Take you all round, but you don't appear to me to have the rudiments of notion of the rules of health. Well," he added, after he had dosed them round and they had taken his prescriptions, with really laughable humility, "more than charity school children, than blood-guilty mutineers and pirates. Well, that's done for today, and now I shall wish to have a talk with the boy, please." And he nodded his head in my direction carelessly. George Mary was at the door, spitting and spluttering over some bad-tasting medicine. But at the first word of the doctor's proposal, he swung round with a deep flush and cried, "No!" and swore. Silver struck the barrel with his open hand. "Silence!" he roared, and looked at him positively like a lion. "Doctor," he went on in unusual tones, I was thinking of that, knowing as you had a fancy for the boy. Well, we're all humbly grateful for your kindness, and as you see, puts faith in you and takes the drugs down like that much grog. And I take it I've found a way as suit all. Hawkins, will you give me your word of honor as a young gentleman, for young gentleman you are, although poor-born, your word of honor, not slip your cable?" I readily gave the pledge required. "Then, Doctor," said Silver, "you just step outside that stockade, and once you're there, I'll bring the boy down on the inside, and I reckon that you'll yarn through the spars. Good day to you, sir, and our duties to the squire and Captain Smollett." The explosion of disapproval, which nothing but Silver's black looks had restrained, broke out immediately. The doctor had left the house. Silver was roundly accused of playing double, or trying to make a separate peace for himself, of sacrificing the interest of his accomplices and victims, and, in one word, of the identical exact thing that he was doing. It seemed to me so obvious in this case that I could not imagine how he was to turn their anger. But he was twice the man that the rest were, and his last night's victory had given him a huge preponderance on their minds. He called them all the fools and dolts you can imagine, said it was necessary I should talk to the doctor, fluttered the chart in their faces, and asked them if they could afford to break the treaty the very day they were bound treasure hunting. "No, by thunder," he cried. "It's us must break the treaty when the time comes. Until then, I'll gammon the doctor, if I have to ile his boots with brandy." And then he bade them to get the fire lit, and stalked out upon his crutch, with a hand on my shoulder, leaving them in a disarray, and silenced by his volubility rather than convinced. "Slow, lad, slow," he said. "They might round upon us in the twinkle of an eye if we'd seemed to hurry." Very deliberately, then, did we advance across the sand to where the doctor awaited us on the other side of the stockade, and as soon as we were within easy speaking distance, Silver stopped. "You'll make a note of this here also, Doctor," said he, "and the boy'll tell you how I saved his life, and we're deposed for it too, and you may lay to that. Doctor, when a man's steering as near to the wind as me, playing chuck farthing with the last breath in his body, like, you wouldn't think it too much, mayhap, but give him one good word. You'll please bear in mind that it's not my life only now. It's the boy's into the bargain. And you'll speak me fair, Doctor, and give me a bit of hope to go on, for the sake of mercy." Silver was a changed man once he was out there and had his back to his friends in the blockhouse. His cheeks seemed to have fallen in, his voice trembled. Never was a soul more dead in earnest. "Why, John, you're not afraid?" said Dr. Livesey. "Doctor, I'm no coward. Not so much." He snapped his fingers. "If I was, I wouldn't say it, but I'll own up fairly. I've the shakes upon me for the gallows. You're a good man and true. I've never seen a better man, and you'll not forget what I done good. Not any more than you'll forget the bad, I know. And I step aside, see here, and leave you and Jim alone. And you'll put that down for me too, for it's a long stretch is that." So saying, he stepped back a little way, till he was out of earshot, and there sat down upon a tree stump and began to whistle, spinning round now and again upon his seat, so as to command a sight, sometimes of me and the doctor, and sometimes of the unruly ruffians as they went to and fro in the sand between the fire, which they were busy rekindling, and the house from which they brought forth pork and bread to make the breakfast. "So, Jim," said the doctor sadly, "here you are, and you've brewed, and so shall you drink, my boy. Heaven knows, I cannot find it in my heart to blame you. But this much I will say, be it kind or unkind, when Captain Smollett was well, you dared to have gone off. When he was ill and couldn't help it, by George, it was downright cowardly. I will own that I here began to weep. Doctor, I said, you might spare me. I've blamed myself enough. My life's forfeit anyway. And I should have been dead by now if Silver hadn't stood for me, and Doctor, believe this, I can die. And I dare say I deserve it. But what I fear is torture. If they come to torture me. Jim, the doctor interrupted, and his voice was quite changed. Jim, I can't have this. Whip over and we'll run for it. Doctor, said I passed my word. I know, he cried. We can't help that, Jim. Now, I'll take it on my shoulders. Holus bolus, blame and shame, my boy. But stay here. I cannot let you. Jump. One jump and you're out, and we'll run for it like antelopes. No, I replied. You know right well you wouldn't do the thing yourself. Neither you nor squire nor captain. And no more will I. Silver trusted me. I passed my word, and back I go. But, Doctor, you did not let me finish. If they come to torture me, I might let a slip of word where the ship is, for I got the ship, part by luck and part by risking, and she lies in the north inlet, on the southern beach, and just below high water. At half tide, she must be high and dry. The ship, exclaimed the doctor. Rapidly, I described to him my adventures, and he heard me out in silence. There is a kind of fate in this, he observed when I had done. Every step, it's you that saves our lives. And do you suppose by any chance that we are going to let you lose yours? That would be a poor return, my boy. You found out the plot. You found Ben Gunn, the best deed that you ever did or will do, though you live to 90. Oh, by Jupiter, and talking of Ben Gunn, why, this is mischief in person. Silver, he cried, Silver. I'll give you a piece of advice, he continued as the cook drew nearer again. Don't you be in any great hurry after that treasure. Why, sir, I do my possible, which that ain't, said Silver. I can only, asking your pardon, save my life and the boys by seeking for that treasure. And you may lay to that. Well, Silver, replied the doctor, if that is so, I'll go one step further. Look out for squalls when you find it. Sir, said Silver, as between man and man, that's too much and too little. What you're after, why, you've left the blockhouse. Why you given me that there chart? I don't know, now, do I? And yet I done your bidding with my eyes shut and never a word of hope. But no, this here's too much. If you won't tell me what you mean plain out, just say so, and I'll leave the helm. No, said the doctor musingly. I've no right to say more. It's not my secret, you see, Silver. Or, I give you my word, I'll tell it to you. But I'll go as far with you, and I dare go, and a step beyond. For I'll have my wig sorted by the captain, or I'm mistaken. At first, I'll give you a bit of hope. Silver, if we both get alive out of this wolf trap, I'll do my best to save you, short of perjury. Silver's face was radiant. You couldn't say more. I'm sure, sir. Not if this was my mother, he cried. Well, that's my first concession, added the doctor. My second is a piece of advice. Keep the boy close beside you, and when you need help, halloo. I'm off to seek it for you. And that itself will show you that I speak at random. Goodbye, Jim. And Dr. Livesey shook hands with me through the stockade, nodded to Silver, and set off at a brisk pace into the wood.